The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Welcome to my radio and TV show, Debi Changes Lives. I'm Debi, your certified holistic health coach. I revitalize people's lives by helping them identify the root causes of their health issues and create a custom, natural, holistic strategy to address them in the areas of mind, body, and soul. As a health coach, I'm not allowed to say that I heal, treat, cure, prevent, or diagnose any diseases. I certainly can make your body more efficient by reducing symptoms. You'll feel better, be more productive, and enjoy life more. Not many people have released 70 pounds. I had a health transformation. I kept fit and trim for over a decade. I have staying power. I even became a half marathon runner when I never ran my whole entire life at the age of 51. Mindset is the key to lasting change. I revitalize people's lives in many different areas of health and mindset, and I guide them through a clean, toxic-free diet and high-quality essential nutrients. My coaching is for optimizing their health, releasing weight efficiently if needed, and enhancing their mindset. You will see and feel the difference with my coaching programs. Ask me about them at my complimentary consultation button of my link tree at Debi Changes Lives, DebiChangesLives, as in victory, es.com/Linktree, Linktree, and I'll guide you to a better, healthier life. Now, if you know my story, you can go to the next slide. You know that I have transitioned from capturing people's stories in books and products. And yes, that's me in 2011. That's how I was back then. To revitalizing people's health in their lives. Story is a thread throughout our lives. Some stories are good and some stories are bad. Good stories inspire us, uplifts us, and keeps us going. With my health programs, I use an online digital photo program that not only does memory keeping products, but also captures people's transformational journeys in books and posters. I have my clients create a vision boards and avatar boards, a new version of themselves to propel them to capture their transformational journey and remember their story. You can see these foundational products to fill in the gaps at bit.ly, inspired with a D at the end, memories with the S at the end as one word. And you can ask me for guidance and learn more. People's stories are powerful and nurturing, and they're great for your mind and as well as uplifting your souls. Today I have Chris Epting and Candi, whose approaches for capturing memoirs are similar and different. Chris is a best-selling author who has published more than 45 books. He has collaborated with personalities like Debi Brothers and John Oates. His latest work, Where One Hears the Rain, inspires everyone to share their story. I love this book because he and I share a philosophy that writing is so therapeutic. Some of his methods I've actually used to help people capture their stories. And Candi is a certified life story advocate. She and her friend Heidi Arvey are owners of Nicholas Fern, which is a storybook legacy company. She has a master's degree in teaching and learning and a mother of 4, and she's passionate about connecting generations through life stories of elders and their families. Though her children have never met their great-grandfather, the story of their great-grandfather are in her hearts because she wrote his life story. This passion of storytelling is Candi's mission to empower everyday people to become family stars, positively influencing future generations. She is dedicated to ensuring their stories are told, and all this is therapeutic throughout the generations. Now, she and Heidi have this wonderful guidebook, My Life, My Story, and you get a copy of it for $20 from me, plus shipping. Just select the email portion on my link tree to tell me you want it. Today, we'll be discussing capturing and preserving precious family memoirs. So let's welcome author Chris Epting and Candi May, a certified life story advocate and co-owner of Nicholas Fern. Chris and Candi, welcome to my show.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. You're welcome, you guys. I'm so happy you're here. Let's start off with Chris. Chris, your writing spans many genres and also subjects. You have travel books and memoirs of public figures from the past, and of course, recent people like the Debi brothers and John Oates. What inspired you to explore a diverse range of topics? And can you share memorable experiences and lessons you've learned from your collaborations?
Well, as far as why I started co-writing memoirs, I was at a point as a writer, I had written a lot of books about history, travel, and things I was interested in. But as a music journalist, I love music, and I had become friendly with one of my subjects who I'd written about a lot, named Phil Collin, who's the lead guitar player in a band called Def Leppard. Wow. And he and I were in a car one day going to a Def Leppard show, and we started chatting. And I asked him if he ever thought about writing his own story. I had watched him enough in his element and thought it was really fascinating. He had not. One thing led to another. That was the first time I co-wrote a book with anybody. And I just fell in love with the process. I liked you mentioned the therapeutic aspect, helping somebody come to grips with their life and tap into things maybe they haven't ever thought about before. And that kind of set me off. And then same thing with John Oates. I had written about him. We'd become friends. And so one thing would lead to another. And I, started writing books like that. And as far as a memorable experience, I mean, there's a lot of them. I will tell you that one night on the road with Hall & Oates, because that's when John and I did a lot of work, was when they were still together and still traveling, because musicians have a lot of downtime on the road. And I remembered one night we had just started working on the book, and we were in a hotel suite. And whenever they would stay in a suite, I would always notice that John Oates would have like a fruit basket delivered by the promoter, but like not like we know of a fruit basket. Things that are like 5 feet tall, with I'm surprised there weren't like live animals inside of them. These really elaborate, expensive things. And John said, "How do you think the book's going so far? How do you think we're doing?" And I said, "I think we're doing okay." He thought we were doing great. I said, "But I got to be honest with you. I sense that you're not really like going deep." And he didn't know what I meant. I looked at that basket and I said, "Right, as an example, I like metaphors." And I said, "Look at the red cellophane that's wrapped around. Like, we can see what's inside. We can see the fruit and all the exotic treats in there, but we can't get to it because it's wrapped in cellophane." I said, "I feel like where we're at right now is we haven't removed the cellophane. Like, we see it there, we know it's good, but why don't we, psychologically try and remove that layer, which will then allow us to really dive in and enjoy what we need to write a great book." And that stuck with him. And he embraced that idea. It's whenever we would tell a story, he would say, "Wait, there's like more cellophane to be unwrapped from it." So that was one experience that stands out to me that I learned from as well, because that just kind of happened on the fly. But that idea that you can see a story, but until you really give yourself permission to remove that layer, that protective layer, that membrane or whatever around it, it's hard to dive in deep where you need to be.
Yeah, and that story is actually in your book that you wrote, where one hears the rain. And so I'm really happy that you shared that with us today. In this book, you don't need to show that right now. In this book,
Yeah.
it was going to be shown later again. In this book, you inspire, authors who want to share their memoirs with some great prompts and methods that I share with my clients too. Would you share one of those methods? And also, how do you think story telling impacts our lives?
What was the last part of that, Debbie? I'm sorry.
How do you think storytelling impacts our lives?
I'll start with that first. I mean, storytelling impacts our lives because it's a chance to take stock of what we've done in the world and what the world has done to us. And I just think I like to believe everybody at some point will document on some level what their experience has been here in their life. I think it impacts our lives and other people's lives by inspiring us, by helping us cope with things and relating to people that are going through things we may be going through. So in a general sense, it just reminds us, storytelling that is, that we're not alone, that we're never alone when you hear a good story and somebody tells a story you can relate to. As to what I encourage people to do, there are a lot of prompts in there. And I mean, it's not a textbook per se. There's a lot of stories as well. But one thing that I always start with as a kind of prompt suggestion whenever we begin is just making a very simple list of 10 or 12 things in your life that you sort of measure life on other side of those events, just as starting points to talk about. It could be a birth, it could be a death, it could be a job, it could be a relationship, but a moment in your life where something really changed, for better or worse, just in a way that you've never quite gotten over. And I think when you start with those really basic moments in your life, those road posts, those mileposts, that those markers, that's a good starting point. And from there, you can kind of funnel down into more nuanced, smaller moments that still hold, deep significance. But for me, the starting point is always that first initial list of again, 10 or 12 things or so, times in your life that where something happened or you experienced something that was revelatory.
Oh, that's lovely. Now, Candi, your passion is for storytelling too. You capture stories of the stars in our family. Please tell us about Nicholas Fern and how you got started and what you do.
Well, thank you so much, Debbie. You sure have inspired me to be healthier by your wonderful example. And I sure enjoyed Chris's take on story. And I was jotting down some notes that he was sharing. That's wonderful. I started this over 20 years ago. One of my heroes is my grandfather. And so when he was turning 80, I wrote his life story. I just called him up. He lived up in northern Canada. And it was a 40-minute phone call. And I just asked him questions that I thought that my children, his great-grandchildren, might want to know about him. And so he would sometimes get going on different topics that weren't so interesting. They were interesting to him. And I'd pull him back and I'd say, Grandpa, who did you look up to as a child? What did you want to be? And I'd ask him all these questions that I wanted my children to know about him. What do you think are the most important things in your life? And my children didn't really meet him. And my son was 5 years old when he passed away, this little boy on his lap. So they didn't know him. But on his birthday, we read his storybook, and each one of my 4 children now know my grandpa, my hero. And I just want you to make note that Chris's audience is the world. And he was talking about these amazing people and how he can take down those layers and tell their story to connect people and to help people understand themselves better too, and to not feel so alone. Well, I want you to think, everyone out there, who matters most to you? Who do you care the very most about? Who's going to be at your funeral? Who's going to be there to take care of you when you're old, right? I hope the answer, if it just depends, everyone's different. It might be your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, right?
Yes, it is.
And that is our audience. Chris has that wonderful talent. He's a published author, but we make publishing accessible to the average person. My grandfather wasn't anyone special in the worldly sense, but he was special to me. And he's now special to my children, and my grandchildren and great-grandchildren will know this great man, because it's just a simple book, Debbie. It's just a few pages long, 24 pages, and it has the most important and precious, what I call milestone photos connected throughout the book. So that's how we got started. The passion goes on. I started a company recently called Nicholas Fern, because what we found is that every family member, every single person I've talked to in my 20 years of doing this, wants to do a story for someone. Maybe it's someone that passed away too early. Maybe it was even a special pet. And they want to do it, but often and maybe you recognize this, Debbie, that they often don't. And Chris did touch on that as well. And so what Nicholas Fern does is we make sure that story gets told. And a lot of people want to do big history, but what we found is a small book, about 3,000 words, 12 questions answered, is enough to give like a Reader's Digest version of an amazing life. This man, for example, one of the questions is, who had the biggest influence on your life, and what did they teach you? And here he talks about his father and his mother. And it's so simple, Debbie, but it's so important because he's 95 years old. And this little man, he sat on the pew next to me at church, and he'd bring his little wife in, who's right here, and she'd be dressed up all sparkly and cute. And then she passed away of Alzheimer's disease. Oh. And I was able to just go interview him after she passed away. I'm sure he felt very lonely. And I interviewed him and said, let's do your story. And now he could talk about his parents. He could talk about his dear wife. And it just made a difference in his life. But think of the impact it'll make on his 30-odd posterity and growing.
That's so heartwarming.
Yeah.
Thank you, Candi. Now, you mentioned some things, but when people capture their stories within their families, I think we know the answer. Who benefits the most?
There's so many people that benefit. There's the person that actually captures the story. You know what I mean? When we interview Grandma and Grandpa, the person writing the story benefits. Grandma and Grandpa who feel alone, forgotten, they benefit. And then, of course, the posterity.
Yeah. Now, both of you have different approaches for a similar outcome. Of course, you've already mentioned, Candi. Chris is doing things for the public realm, and it goes to millions of people. Yours are treasuring a family star's history that's going to help the person during their life. It's going to help many generations later on, and it's going to be part of the family library. If each one of these approaches have a place in our world. Now, what I would like you to think about, you guys, is what do you think of each other's approach? Now, Candi kind of mentioned something already, Chris. So what do you think, Chris?
I think Candi and I have more in common, actually, than it may appear on the surface, because there's no one I've worked with that, as well known as they might be, that isn't really concerned about what their family's going to think about their story. That's what drives everything. They're not worried about what the fans think. It's what are their kids going to think. And so in that respect, I never think about the audience as much as I do capturing something that if it was for one person or a million people, that it still works. You know what I mean? You're still telling. I always put it this way. If I start a book with somebody who's very well known, the first thing I say to them is, let's write for people that have never heard of you before. People who know you, but let's work really hard and act as if nobody knows you. Then we'll work harder to tell your story. So I think in that respect, Candi and I are both going for authenticity, intimacy, and relevancy within the context of someone's life. I don't think that's different at all. And I've also, it's funny, I've written kind of gun for hire things with people that just want this kind of story for a family and things. And I never find the process that different. It's to me, it really is just about getting to the heart of the matter, finding moments that are relatable, that have some kind of universal truth and some profound, sense of change that somebody goes through. So I really like what Candi does. I deeply respect it. And like I said, I think we're more closely aligned than people might think by if you gave somebody our two bios and said, well, here they are. I think it's closer than it may seem on paper.
I think yours takes a little longer and it's more involved. Ours is a couple visits and we capture the story. Mm-hmm. We give it a rewrite, we read it back to them, and then we get those photos. I just wanted to share with this gentleman who took care of his wife who had Alzheimer's, just his last page, and it's his advice page for his posterity. And it's just a couple sentences. It says, "The advice I have for my posterity is to be honest and honorable in all your dealings. Honesty is the most important quality a person can possess. If you want to leave a mark in life, you better be honest. Something I want people to remember about me is that I'm serviceable. I love to serve. I love people, and I've tried to be a friend to everybody I met. How powerful for his grandchildren to know that. What is the most important thing to him? And I love what Chris said, how it's so similar. That's really neat that the way his process, and that it's similar, but like I said, his is much, much more entailed.
Well, yeah, from a time standpoint, but what you just read there is very poignant. I know his grandkids got a lot out of that, but you could share that with anybody, I would hope, and they would feel like there's something very important being said. You know what I mean? It's
especially from a 95-year-old, right?
Yeah, well,
here's someone that's lived their whole life here on this earth, and I'm always fascinated to know what is the most important thing to them, and to boil it down to honesty or hard work. That kind of thing. It's incredible.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you guys, these points are fantastic. And Candi, with Nicholas Fern, now you said it's only a couple of appointments, you put it together, and is that all that's really involved if someone's going to hire you as a service?
Okay, so we have a couple of things. I just want to make this clear. I'm sure it's very confusing at first. So I'm local in Southern Utah, in St. George, Utah. And so I do go to veterans homes, assisted living centers, and we approach people that are like that gentleman who's 95 and say, do you want your story told? And you know what the first thing they say to us is, no one's interested. I'm not that important. I don't have anything interesting to share. And you know what? We tell their story, and then they see their value. And so that's what I do on a local level. But what our website does, and what Debi's going to share with you later, is that you can do this yourself. And we just guide you. We make sure that the story gets told by just helping you, download the 12 question questionnaire, how to upload the photos. There's only 14 photos that go into the book, so it's not overwhelming for families. And we just make sure that you get it done. And what I would recommend, if you have a special loved one, whether it's you or you have one of your children or grandchildren, interview them. That is where our first love is. I can go interview a 95-year-old man, but if his granddaughter or great-granddaughter did that, it would be even more powerful for that family. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're probably going to offer you worldwide today. We do have what we call certified life storybook advocates that do it in certain cities, and we're growing. So even if that was interesting to you, we are looking for people in different areas.
Oh, how wonderful is that? You can share in the love of creating your own story for your family member so they can become a star. Now, I have another question for the two of you. Chris and Candi, people have challenges when they face writing their stories. How can they overcome them? Who wants to go first?
Candi?
Oh, how can they overcome when we're facing the
challenges?
When they don't,
they feel like writing is a challenge. So how can they overcome them?
Well, the thing I heard, and I'll let Chris address the other part, is a lot of times they want to tell me kind of a pretty fairy tale, these elderly people that I interview. And what I like to do is explain to them that they need to tell me something that they've been through that's been really hard. And I'm sure Chris can relate to this. You don't just want the fluff. Everyone wants to tell you all the good things. But I'm going to tell you that 95-year-old man has been through some hard things. And so what I like to do is dig. It's only one page for us, but we say, what is something hard you've been through and how did you get through it? And at first they don't want to share, but then I explain that, this world is hard for our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The world's coming at them in all different angles. They don't know what to believe a lot of times. They need to know that their great-grandfather went through something hard and they want to know how he did it, and that you can get through anything. So that's what I kind of heard in your question, but I know you were digging for even something different, and maybe Chris can address that.
Well, I agree with you. Yeah, the idea of conflict and things you've overcame. Another thing that to me, what helps people some understanding if I'm working with somebody, or even if I'm just giving advice in a talk or something, is that when you start to write, don't think about the fact. I think what hangs up people sometimes is the thought that others are going to read this, and it's going to feel either embarrassing or it's too much. And it may be, but I always say up front, don't think about that, because you don't have to share anything. Get it out first and get it on paper, and then look at it and see some things may not be appropriate to share. What's important is getting it off your chest and not worrying so much about the audience, but just going through the process. I've been in sessions with people I've worked with who have said, boy, I wish I could tell you this next story, but there's no way it could go in the book. And I'll say, well, tell me anyway, because it doesn't have to go in the book, but there might be something connected to it that would go in the book. Don't interrupt the process. We can organize and deal with what's shareable after. But so as unfiltered as you can be, I guess that would be one thing I would say to encourage overcoming any kind of fear or trepidation about when you're early in the process. It's just try not to overthink it. Think of it more as a letting loose session, just to get going, and kind of see where it goes. But you don't have to share. That's up to you. Nobody ever has to see that, but you will feel physically different and lighter by getting it off your chest.
Oh, I love that. I have one gentleman who his kids don't talk to him anymore. And his wife bought the life storybook for him. And so I interviewed him. And he goes, no one cares. No one's going to read this. And I said, yeah, you might be right. But what if they do? What if there's a grandchild that hasn't been born yet that wants to read this? Exactly. And so when I got to the question about the hard, he shared about how he was fired once and how embarrassing that was. And we put that in the book. And his wife gave one to each of his kids at Christmas. And she goes, I've never seen his kids respond better. And honestly, Chris, I think it's the rawness from the book, because I think they think dad thinks he's so great and so perfect. And they saw the flaw in it, and it connected those generations. And that just gives me chills, because once they understand that they can share the hard, then I think it softens those barriers between people.
Very well said. And I completely agree. We all, especially as parents, we always try and be perfect in our kids' lives, right? And you almost take on a heroic figure, but we're flawed human beings, and we make mistakes, but your kids can learn from those mistakes. Maybe you can show them how not to be, as well as how to be. So I think all of those things as part of the therapeutic process matter, not holding back. And, I always find, and you may as well, that when you're working with somebody, you have to, the situation you create, the comfort level and the trust you've got to build quickly really matters, and that's what helps people. That's what facilitates the ability to share is somebody such as yourself who put somebody in that mindset where it's okay to share, and they don't feel judged, and they don't feel like they're going to get in trouble or anything. And it's a safe environment to let go, and to share important things.
Yeah. And, when you start releasing and sharing and even writing your story, it releases that angst, pain, and gets lessened over time. So that's why it's important to journal and do other things to write your story, so that you're not so tied to that negative thing that's lowering your vibration and how you feel about life. Because you don't want to be in that fear, angst mode. No. You want to be in higher vibrations like love and joy. So that's
I equate it almost like to being raised a Catholic. I mean, there's almost like going to confession. I mean, when you go to confession and you sort of speak the harder things that you've done, and you're forgiven. That's part of the deal.
Exactly.
You download it and you can walk out of there lighter. That's a good point.
Exactly. And that's what brings you up vibrationally. So yes.
Just really quick, in trying to produce these books for the elderly, I went through the questions myself, and I put together a book about myself. And when you were talking, Chris, that's exactly what came up for me. I thought I had a certain story, and though I'm only 54 and brand new grandmother with my first grandchild, my daughter just had a baby, I feel like I can be an influencer, or what I call a grandfluencer, right? Like, who better for that baby to read storybooks instead of books that we see like this that are fantastic? Why not be an influence by the grandmother? And so it was a really fun process. But as you were talking, I felt lighter. I felt like I had a story. And then when I told it and wrote it and kind of edited it and went through it, I realized that I had a lot more gratitude for my parents. I realized what was really important to me. And so I think it's powerful for anyone. And I'd really invite you all, even you, Chris and Debi, to write your own story. And these questions are simple, but it's powerful.
And I have in a chapter of a book, so in an anthology, so it is very powerful, but there's always things I can fill out more, you know, in something like that for my personal family. Now I have, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to encourage everyone to buy Chris's book. If you could bring that slide up, Where One Hears the Rain. Because it's just a great book. Like I said before, it's therapeutic, and there's little ways of how you can do this yourself. But you know what's really great is we have Chris here right now. And Chris, you know, when it comes to inspiring authors that are out there, how can you help them break through into the publishing world?
Well, I mean, I teach a lot of this. I've taught these classes for about 10 or 11 years, and there's a chapter in that book about, you know, approaches you can take. I've worked with a lot of different kinds of publishers, from really small to really big to mid-sized ones. And there's approaches you can take. It's doable. I mean, if I can do it, honestly, it's doable. But like anything, you know, it's a process, and you got to be persistent and have thick skin and all of that. But there's, you know, I honestly, I don't think there's ever been an easier time to get published. There are just that many outlets, and even a lot of young publishers that are looking for new voices and new stories and all of that. And it all depends what you're looking for. Some people want to sell books. Other people want to just create something for family and friends. It's all achievable, you know. And I kind of lay out what I've learned, you know, as a writer, and how to approach publishers, how to write a proposal, you know, how to figure out what publisher might be good to approach, or how to get an agent and things like that. But it's like anything, you know, it can be done. You've just got to have a good story, and you know, patience, of course, but a passion for telling a story and not worrying about what's going to happen with it. I always tell people, don't write for money. That's, you know, if you have a great story, you know, you might get lucky and people will want to follow you and buy your book, but that's never, I don't think, a good reason to get involved in writing. That's not, to me, what it's about. Writing is about sharing and sort of coming to grips in terms of things yourself with your own stories, and helping others do that as well. And good things come from that if you're honest and you're authentic and you work hard at it.
Yeah, it's really important not to worry about it, because what you're doing is you're just judging your own self-worth, and you have no idea what another perspective or another person is going to see in that's going to help them and heal them, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Where did you get the title from? It's so fascinating.
Oh, thank you. The title, I get asked that a lot, and there's a story behind it. Very briefly, when I was about fifth grade or so, I had a teacher who called my mother and said, we had a writing assignment in class. She said, Chris really liked that. You should encourage him to write. I've never seen him have so much fun in school. And this also opened my eyes to the importance of teaching, and how teachers can see things sometimes in you that your parents may not, because you're a different person at school, especially as a kid. So I told my parents, because I loved this teacher so much, that I wanted to be a writer. That's the day I wanted to become a writer, when this teacher reached out. And my father let me know that in our neighborhood was a very famous fiction writer named John Cheever, one of his favorite writers. I had never heard of him as a kid, but my father said, you need to write him and ask him for advice. So I did. And within a couple of days, I got a letter back, and then a phone call. And this created this mentorship until he died when I was in college. I would go to John Cheever's house like every week or two, and have this really, I mean, nothing I appreciated as a kid. I never told a friend of mine I was doing it because I didn't think it was cool. But I was osmosing all of this writing information and experience. And so I was journaling about it back then. So this particular book, Where One Hears the Rain, within that book, interwoven is everything I learned from John Cheever, which I had never shared with anybody, sometimes in classes, but never formally. And so that line is from a quote of his. I remember the exact quote, but it began, according to John Cheever, quote, a good page of prose is where one hears the rain, where one hears the footsteps of battle, basically saying that descriptive writing matters, and you've got to make the reader feel like they're there. So I love that collection of words where one hears the rain. I thought it was very poetic and very beautiful, but it speaks to the idea that when you, any kind of writing that you do, it's got to make the reader feel as if they're with you, where they can hear the rain, so to speak. So that's where that comes from. It's a portion of a John Cheever quote.
Well, it attaches to your emotions and audio. It's just kinesthetic. It's just so, it's a wonderful title. You're welcome. I'm going to briefly segue. Right now, if you can go to the next slide, I just want to remind you of my life, my story, which is going to come up on the next slide. If she doesn't show it, it's here. Remember, you can purchase this from me for $20 plus shipping. Now, go to my link tree and find out the email of that and ask me for the book. And then you can select whatever type of shipping you want. Now, Candi, what's your offer and how do you utilize, can people utilize it?
Okay. Well, you have the link.
Slide, please. Go ahead.
You have the link. Debbie will have a link, and she's got you a great deal. We've reduced our price just for you. You click on her link and you go to the storybook offer, and we walk you through the steps, and your outcome will be a beautiful hardbound 8x8 storybook, whether it be for a grandparent or for yourself as an influential person in your family.
Yes, and if this next slide comes up, you'll see what the pricing is and what you're saving. There it is. So from $179.99 down to $149, and you can go to bit.ly/N for Nicholas, F for Fern, I for influencer, and S for studio, as NFIS, okay? And check it out and see if that you want to do. And you know what's really cool is that little locket too, because you can record audio and you can have a little QR code that which will play a segment of his story or the whole story.
Very nice.
I love that. So now, what I'm going to do right now is, so we can have more time for closing remarks, I'm going to just go through a little bit about me and what I offer and bring you guys back. So before I do that, I know Candi will be a guest again. Chris, will you be a guest again on my show?
Absolutely.
Well, that would be fun. Thank you. So let's go into what I need to wrap up with, and then we'll come back for closing remarks. Remember, I revitalize your life in many different areas of health. I do help guide you to clean, toxic-free foods and high-quality essential nutritional products that will reduce symptoms. You'll feel better and possibly release weight and uplift your mood. With my mindset coaching, I help you release stress, reduce emotions, and entanglements from the past. Of course, with my health optimization and my weight release programs, your body will be more efficient. Ask me at my complimentary consultation programs at my link tree, which is at Debi Changes Lives, DebiChanges Live as in Victory, ES.com/link tree, where you get to know me, I get to know you, and I can guide you to your optimal health. And it begins with 1 or 2 assessments. The first one is the health evaluation, which will come up in the next slide. It's complimentary. You rate your symptoms in the last 30 days in 4 categories of health. There may be some repetitive questions. Just answer them all. You get a health score. I review it with you. Now, if you after I review it with you, if you feel like you want to move forward with my service assessment, I create that custom natural holistic strategy, and we'll do this on a monthly basis. I also have 2 different Zyto-Link scans, and I prefer to do the body scans. I prefer to do the Zyto-Link scan, obviously, because you can do it remotely and internationally. Now, Zyto-Link is a transdermal optical imaging app where you can scan your face for 30 seconds. It's only looking at blood flow for components of emotional, functional, and energetic and different body systems and lifestyles. It generates a wellness report, not a diagnosis of biomarkers out of range and products and services to bring them back into range. Now, it's quite intensive, so I do review it with you. The cost of the scan is $50. That cost will go up soon. And but it gives you a lot of answers to what you want to do. If you move forward with my programs or my products, I give you a $25 discount. Now, transdermal optical imaging, or TOI, which is what Xiolink does, is very accurate, and you can look that up at pubmed.gov for more information. You can also get a package of 5 scans for the price of 4, saving $50. You'll be pretty amazed what your body will tell you in the scan. So if you're curious, get your first one done and see what it's all about. Next is my programs, which is on the next slide, and I have several of them. Take Your Body Back is my 12-week weight release program that has mindset coaching, and you'll be creating a new version of you and an avatar board that drive you to success. And all coaching is done on Zoom, and the first one's private to you because I go over your health. I give you a choice of 2 meal plans, instructions on one, and also I give you instructions on how to create that new version of you, an avatar board that'll drive you with emotion and passion to achieve your health and weight transformation. All of the coaching, whether it's private or group, is the same. You'll be celebrating your wins, and I'll be getting you over your gaps with health and mindset tips. You will become a new you. And you can always ask me questions at my consultation button, or you can watch a previous episode called Holistic Self-Love on my show button of my link tree. YFAST is an intermittent fasting program that gets your cells and body humming, and in turn boosts your metabolism with rich, dense nutrition and high-quality nutrients with a program with exercise and recipes. Now, intermittent fasting repairs your cells, it reduces inflammation, and it also ups your mood. And you can ask me about questions about this program. And if you feel like you need some guidance and coaching, you can do a 2 or 4 week program. You can also do it throughout the whole program. And go back to the next slide, go back to the previous slide. And finally, you can use our smaller programs for health, mindset health coaching, as well as optimizing weight coaching, weight health coaching. And but those take a little bit longer, so you may want to purchase the bigger programs, and I can create a custom program. For a limited time, I'm offering Debi's Coaching Chat, which is a 30-minute private intimate group setting coaching session that will not be recorded. So they will pick a topic. You learn to optimize your health, ways to release stress, reducing hormones, and efficiently release weight. I'll be teaching you about mindset. You can use it for your transformation, and how to create that new version of you in an avatar board that'll drive you with emotion and passion to achieve your health and weight transformation goals. These meetings are on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. You need to be registered for it at Debi Changes Lives, DebiChangesLives, as in victory, es.com. This time /chat, CHTS. And you learn what my coaching is all about. Finally, learn about alternative health programs, products, and services, upcoming shows, promos, and events by subscribing to my newsletter, which is at DebiChangesLives.com /radio TV show as one word in lowercase. And I give you a 30-day health and mindset daily action journal where you can record your gratitudes, thoughts, feelings, and emotions, as well as the foods you ate, the water you drank, nutritional products you took, exercise done on a daily basis, and even track your measurements. You want to review it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to see your wins and celebrate them, and see your gaps to work on. If you need help bridging your gaps, you contact me for coaching. I'm certain that you found this show educational, inspiring, and enjoyed it. Reach out to me for my programs, products, and services. Reach out to Chris for his book. Actually, just buy the book at any book outlet, and listen to his voice again by listening to this episode. Reach out to Candi for her wonderful offer for capturing those stories of the stars in your family. Can I have them back, please? So, who wants to start off with closing remarks?
Sure. First of all, health matters, you guys. What Debi just shared is probably the most dear thing, is our time here on earth. My most recent client is a gentleman who was diagnosed with brain cancer, and his wife had me write his life story. And it was the first time I've ever done that for someone that was terminal. When life is short, I invite you to think about writing your story. Even if you have a long time here on earth, it's a powerful thing to do, to leave for your children and grandchildren. It's only 12 questions, 14 photos, and we guide you the whole way. Plus, this client created a voice locket. I just had him share the most dear and sweet, important things. And we make it into a QR code that with a smartphone, his grandchildren and great-grandchildren can scan that and hear his voice for up to 100 years after he's gone. And that's powerful. And so I invite you to take a look at this option. It's available to you if you see it as a good fit.
And it is a very powerful option because sometimes writing this book will just bring up their vibrational energy with their emotions, and they may live longer than you think.
Yeah, that's funny you said that. She said after he got the book, it was the first time he slept through the night in ages. You're right, Debbie, you are correct.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And Chris?
I would just, echoing a lot of things that were said here in our session, I would encourage people to think about documenting their story. It doesn't have to be painful. I mean, it doesn't even have to be written necessarily. You can begin recording things. You can videotape things. I just think it's important to document what you've done, who you are, where you've been, what you've learned, what you've gotten over, and all of those things for yourself. And then if you feel like sharing it, that I think that's a valuable thing to do as well. But but that's up to you, depending on how deep you want to go with it. But I do think we're all our own historians for our own lives. I like history, and I've written a lot of history books. And, nobody knows ourselves better than we do. But I would also encourage you, that said, to reach out to other people that have been involved in your life to kind of get their angle, because we see one version of what we do. I always tell people at the beginning of a class in person, if we were to walk outside and, like, God forbid, see a bad accident or something happen, and then went to write about it, we would write about it depending on where we were standing. And it wouldn't mean that, Candi, if you saw it one way or if Debbie, you saw it another, it wouldn't mean you're wrong. It would just mean I didn't see it from that angle. That's your version of it as you experienced it. And our life is like that too. We have our own version of it, but I think it's worth reaching out to others as well. I always do that in memoir projects, talk to others and kind of get alternate views to either clarify or illuminate or what have you, just bring some other new dimension to a story. So again, our version definitely matters. That's your own truth, but you can learn a lot if from people who were there, who observed maybe the exact same episode, that can help you tell a better, deeper story as well. So be open to all different kinds of storytelling, I guess, is the key. Your own voice, other voices, as much as you can capture, as much as you can remember, however you want to document it, just document it.
Yes. And, being open to different perspectives is really important, because you may, add that into your story. And also, when it comes to stress, you need to really realize that when things are outside of your own life, not inside you, you can't control that. So it's important not to be reactive and to be more proactive. And that's looking at it in a different perspective. And I help my clients look at things in a different perspective so they can see, oh, I never thought of it that way. And it's the exact same thing with writing a book. Don't you agree, Chris?
Yeah, totally. Books are confessionals. They're opportunities to get to the bottom of things, to set the record straight, whatever it happens to be. It's a chance to just make sense of your time here.
Very true. So I really wanted this to last forever. But we're going to have to, say goodbye. So I'm going to be saying, continue to enjoy my radio and TV show, Debi Changes Lives, at Thursdays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, where your holistic journey begins.